Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm so honored to be joined by student success coach Elijah Tinson. Elijah, welcome back to the podcast.
Appreciate it. Love to be here.
Well, here's the one thing that I wanted to point out, that we are actually in, as I just mentioned, our maiden voyage in our new podcast studio here in Milano 10A. For those of you who know where the Nasir Harris podcast studio was, we are just right across the hall, and we are in our new digs. And just as a spoiler alert, we are going to have an open house in the spring once we get everything exactly where we want it to be. And so for any of those of you who want to come down to the studio and check it out, please let me know. Or we are going to have an open house in the spring term, or you could just be invited to be a guest on the show, in which case you'll be able to see it. But Elijah, thank you so much for coming back and checking in with us about the wonderful things that are on the event calendar coming to us from AAB and other various organizations across the campus.
Like I said, appreciate to be here. You know, we do have a lot going on this coming term, a lot of different engagement events and things of that nature. Really want to get some new faces to be able to see some different things on campus and, you know, make campus really active.
Well, we have a lot of things to talk about. We're also being joined by Nightly News reporter Noah Lopez. Noah, welcome to your first Nightly News podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, hey, what's up, guys? It's an honor to be on this podcast, actually. I've always wanted to be on one of these, and just to be here and be in this environment, speaking to you guys, it's going to be fun. I can't wait.
That's good, and we are so happy to have you too, Noah. Noah is also our communication work study, which is awesome. So he's been doing some wonderful things for the communication program, and we'll make sure we keep you busy with fun stuff to do, and a lot of that's going to be here in the studio. So, Noah, we definitely look forward to having you and having you on future episodes. All right, well, Elijah, today we're going to talk about a handful of different events that we're going to be looking forward to here in the spring term. Before the end of the show, we're going to take a look at 3 marquee events that we want everyone to pay special attention to. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about a few more things that are going on here. Starting off with, I was looking through the activities calendar and taking a look at what you had coming up this term. And of course, the one thing that I really noticed is coming up on Wednesday, January 17th, Soul Food and Chill. Tell me a little bit more about what Soul Food and Chill is and how we can get involved with that.
So, you know, everybody loves food, right? So, really, it's just an event kind of just to bring, I guess, campus down to earth, per se, with, you know, giving different perspectives of different cultures that we have on campus. So prime example, soul food, right, it's a cultural aspect for some people. The food that's actually getting cooked there is actually going to be made by yours truly, along with Coach Kenton and another student, actually, Lionel Coates. So all 3 of us are going to be collaborating to make different dishes that would be considered soul food dishes. And then from there, it'll just be an open discussion about what soul food is, and just overall cultural aspects of food in general. So it'd be a nice event, nice night. And yeah, like you said, it's next week. So it should be good.
This sort of reminds me of, we had, prior to the pandemic, we had a cooking with CPC, and different faculty members, staff members would get everybody together and actually teach them how to cook. This doesn't necessarily sound like that. That sounds like you're going to have the food prepared and it's more of a conversation and dinner type of situation.
Yeah, so when you think of soul food, right, a lot of times soul food is like cookouts, things like that. Like, it's a get-together. It's just everybody gets together, almost like a family reunion type of thing, right? So that's what we want to make it. We want to make it more of that type of thing where it's like everybody just gets together, has a good time, good vibes, things of that nature, and everybody's just comfortable being who they are around some good food. So that's really the basis behind a lot of it.
And I'm assuming this is going to take place in the NPR?
Yes.
Okay. So again, that's Wednesday, January 17th, 6 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay. Wednesday, January 17th at 6 o'clock in the NPR. Come out for Soul Food and Chill with Elijah Tinson, Kenton Alston, and what was the student's name?
Lionel Coates.
Lionel Coates will be there making some wonderful soul food and having a nice conversation. The second event that I wanted to talk about has to do with something that I'm heavily involved with, and it is the CPC film series. In fact, later in today's podcast, you will hear Nightly News film correspondent, the CPC film correspondent, Nick Hogan, is actually interviewing me. So I get to be interviewed instead of doing the interviewing. Getting ready for the film series coming up on Friday, February 2nd. This one is very special to me because it is a film that I've had a connection with ever since I was just a kid and saw it at the theater. It's going to be Groundhog Day, Bill Murray's classic comedy from 1993. Just celebrated its 30th anniversary, which is pretty insane when you think about it. But it is something that I've had a close affinity to because I was born on Groundhog Day, and every year I have every year I got to make sure that I watch it on my birthday, and it's a tradition that I have. What's interesting about this is I absolutely love this film, and I just want to share my love with the film on Groundhog Day, but also on my birthday. Now, Noah, you'd mentioned that you'd seen this film and that you'd really appreciated this film. So what is it about the film that you truly enjoy, and why do you think that this is something that you're looking forward to?
Oh, well, about the film specifically, it's because, one, it's one of the funniest films of all time, and it set up a legendary and almost, historical moment in film history to inspire films for the future. Like there's another film on Netflix where a guy keeps going through a loop until he gets his wedding right. I'm not going to say the name because it's not appropriate for school, but it's a really funny film. You should watch it.
How can we watch it if we don't know what it is?
Well, I can't say the name.
Okay, we'll keep it at that. But no,
Yeah.
and that's really interesting because it's certainly not the first film that's ever used a time loop, but it's probably the most well-known film that's used a time loop.
Exactly.
And that's really what it is Phil Connors is stuck in a time loop on February 2nd in Punxsutawney, PA. One of the things that I've actually been to Punxsutawney, I haven't been on Groundhog Day because it's like freezing, but I have been there and I have met Punxsutawney Phil before.
Punxsutawney Phil?
Yes, the actual groundhog.
Do you watch it every year on your birthday to see if Punxsutawney Phil will come out?
In the morning, you mean?
Yeah.
They do it at like 6 o'clock in the morning, so I'm usually just getting ready for work.
No, he's not watching that at 6 a.m.
But I certainly do follow it. It's all folklore. I'm not going to...
It's silly stuff. Oh, the groundhog is going to see a shadow. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it is. Actually, that's kind of what's interesting about getting to meet the folks at Punxsutawney is because they are very into the whole lore of the groundhog, and they know that it's just for fun. I wouldn't say a religion, but it's just for fun. Like, they don't take themselves too seriously, a lot of really fun people. So I would like to go up on a Groundhog Day. The thing is that it's unbelievably difficult to get in. You can't drive right up, and you'd have to get up the night before, stay up all night. It's really a whole process if you want to go up there.
It's probably like one of those things where like people get tents and stuff in there.
Tents?
Like,
Groundhog Day?
waiting outside.
I think people just stay up all night. Like, I think they open the grounds the night before, and it's just all night and then all the way to the next morning until the groundhog actually comes out, and then people head out. But
is it like a trained groundhog? Like, how does it just know or instinctively come out on the exact day of February 2nd at 6 a.m.?
No, Phil has his own residence in Punxsutawney. There's actually a place that they have Phil,
zoo?
But it's like a private club. But they do a lot of like meet and greets with Phil. It's actually really interesting. But I do talk about that a bit more in the second part of this podcast today. But just wanted to put that out there. Friday, February 2nd, Groundhog Day, free entry, free to all, on campus, off campus, friends, family, come one, come all. And it's also, you're going to be spending my birthday with me.
Y'all better come for his birthday or we're going to come find you.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate anybody who wants to spend my birthday with me at the CPC Film Series, Friday, February 2nd. Doors will open at 6 o'clock in the Capitol Blue Cross Theater. All right, third thing I wanted to talk about here, Elijah, is the BSU Super Bowl party on Sunday, February 11th, in ATEC 200 from 5 until the game concludes. First and foremost, now that we're sitting here, it's going to be tough because till this podcast is released next Tuesday, some of the teams are already going to play. But if I had to put you on the spot right now to give me a Super Bowl champion, who would it be?
Oh, that's tough.
Put him on the spot like that.
Yeah, no, I'm a football guy myself. So,
Well, who's your team?
Oh, my team is not in the playoffs right
Okay.
now. I am a Patriots fan. We had a very, very tough season this season.
As a Washington football team fan, I feel your pain. We may have had a worse season than you.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. But if I had to make a prediction of the Super Bowl winner, I'm probably going to. The 49ers look really good. But
The Packers.
no,
Not the
the
Packers.
Ravens. It's going to be them, I feel like, in the final, first off. I probably think I'll take the Ravens if I'm being honest. Just based off of the matchup that I seen, 2-3 weeks ago, I'm thinking that the Ravens might be the ones to take it.
So regardless of who is in the
Yeah.
Super Bowl, this BSU Super Bowl party, tell me a little bit more about it and how we can get involved.
So it'll just, again, it's going to be basically a watch party type of thing. There'll be good food, like, your typical Super Bowl Sunday party food. So like pizza, wings, things of that nature, like chips and dips, stuff like that. Again, it's just another avenue to help kind of engage everybody on campus and give, because not everybody has access to be able to sit down and watch the game. So if there's somehow some way that we can do that, why not, right? So that's really the basis of the whole thing for that too.
Well, and again, so it's just there's no RSVP needed. You can just
You can just show up. It's come as you go, and you can stay there for an hour, 10 minutes, doesn't matter. It's open to everybody, basically. Yeah.
Excellent. So again, that's Sunday, February 11th in ATEC 200 from 5 to 10 p.m. with the BSU Super Bowl party. All right, we're going to move on to our marquee events. These are events that Elijah specifically handpicked because he would like to talk about it and really wants to drive some engagement. And we're going to start off on Friday, January 19th. If you're listening when we first release this coming up Friday, the BSU lock-in that's going to take place in ATEC on Friday night, January 19th. So tell me a little bit more about what a lock-in is in case somebody's not familiar with what it is, because on the surface, it kind of sounds a little scary.
What are we
Yeah.
doing?
No, so at least in past iterations of it, it's had different ways of going. Like, so since I've started at CPC working here, we've had ones that started at, say, 9 o'clock and ended at 3 o'clock in the morning. So usually a lock-in is like everybody is there for like the entire time. Like if you come in, you're there for the rest of the time.
Are we sleeping in the building?
No.
Okay.
This lock-in is a condensed version of that, so it's not going to be as long. I believe it's going to be like from 7 o'clock to like 11:30. Nothing too crazy, but we'll just have like it'd be like games, things like that. We'll watch some shows, things of that nature. There's certain games that we might play, like there's a game called Black Card Revoked that we might play. There's other aspects of certain types of games. So also some people like to bring like their game systems, things like that. That's fine.
Nice.
We can do that too. And again, there'll just be some really good food there. Probably get some Chick-fil-A nuggets, because
Chick-fil-A nuggets. Okay.
And then just different things like that. But it'll be games of that iteration. Uno, because who doesn't love Uno, right? I will say I feel like I'm the best Uno player, but that's just me speaking,
Hey.
Well, Noah, you'll have to go to the BSU lock-in.
Where is it exactly? Is it inside the entire building? Or
No,
certain row?
it's just going to be specifically in ATEC 200.
200, okay.
Yeah, so it's like you have the two rooms back to back.
200 and 202,
Yeah.
Okay,
It'll just be that big space right there.
Awesome. All right. So again, if you are interested, you can always, any of this stuff, you can reach out to Elijah. But again, Friday, January 19th, he said from around 7 o'clock to maybe around 11:30 in ATEC 200 and 202. All right, the second marquee event is something that I had to actually get Elijah and Noah to stop talking about off the air so we could focus on it on air. So it is the February 17th AAB trip to Washington, D.C. So Elijah, if you want to share with us a little bit more about what this is and how you can get involved if you are interested in being a part of this.
The event is going to be happening, of course, during Black History Month, right? So the first half of the basis of the event was to be able to take a trip to the African American Museum down in D.C. And the way it's going to work is we're going to leave Central Penn at 7 o'clock in the morning. It'll be an early leave, but we'll be leaving at 7 in the morning, get down there around 10:30, then go to the African American Museum. Once you do that, the rest of the night, well, day up until 7 o'clock that night is basically free to students to do whatever because of the fact that the Smithsonian museums, all of them are free. So it's like you can just walk right in. And it's just, again, another avenue for students that may not necessarily have had the opportunity previously to go do something like this to get them a chance and opportunity to go to DC. Because I'm not going to lie, I've only been to DC, I think, twice in my entire life. Yeah. And I know there's some people that have never been there. So, at least being able to say that I went to DC finally is nice for some people. And in regards to like actually getting involved in it, so there will be I think we're looking at 12 to 15 spots altogether. Oh, wow. And it'll be a sign up that'll get sent out through the app. So please pay attention to the app because that's one of the only ways that you'll be able to see it. But it'll get sent in through the app, and then through there you'll just put your first name, last name, email, emergency contact, things like that. And then from there you'll get a confirmation from me saying that, this is the rules of it, things of that nature. It's pretty simple, but I think it's going to be a really good trip. I think it'll be a fun trip.
I've spent a few times, I've been to DC several times, but the one that's most memorable to me was a few years ago. I think it was probably 2019 or 2018. We went down every year on July 4th. The Nationals host an 11 a.m. game because it's sort of the kickoff to the DC 4th of July celebration. And it was one of the most amazing experiences. I get to spend the day on July 4th in Washington, D.C., had some amazing food, got to catch a game. It's such a wonderful town, especially if I hope it's a nice day.
Yeah,
I hope it's a warm,
so, right?
I hope it's a warm day because it is a lot of walking, especially to the different Smithsonian museums. But the one thing I did want to point out is if you're a student who's interested in going, first of all, as Elijah mentioned, keep an eye on the app and make sure you sign up as soon as possible. But it's also helpful to go to the Smithsonian website and see all the different museums they have because they have such a wide variety of different museums all within a relatively confined area. Yeah. And so you are going to have some time, but even if the African American History Museum takes you a couple of hours to get through, you're still only going to have a few hours. So you want to pick and make sure that you're hitting the museum or museums that you really want to see. So that would just be my best advice. And their website's fantastic about, how to get from one place to another because they're all in one specific area. But if you don't know where you're going, it's pretty easy to get lost.
It's pretty tough, yeah.
It's, Washington, D.C. I've been there myself twice for 2 school field trips, and it's a beautiful city. Like just walking through aesthetically, the architecture is great. It's amazing. Each museum, personally, I love the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs are probably the best because you go in, it's like, whoa, it's a T-Rex right there. I mean, that's amazing to see. And honestly, you were talking about the Holocaust Museum earlier. I would love to see that because what you're explaining, what the things you were talking about, what you can see in the museum and how it puts you through the experience of how terrible it was and how scary it was, maybe.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool how immersive that museum is.
Yeah, and that's the good part about a lot of the museums down there. They do a really good job of kind of expressing the actual experiences that they're centered around. So I do think they tend to do a really good job with that stuff. And like I said, it's fun to see and it's good to see. And like you said, it's very immersive. So some of this stuff is a little heavy, but overall, it's definitely an experience that, at least I want to give people a chance to be able to do and see themselves because everybody's going to have their own outlook on certain things and they're going to get their own takes on it. But I'd rather people get the opportunity to have a chance to do that. You know what I mean?
Do you think the Washington Zoo would also be something we would go to?
I don't know because I don't know. I don't think that's free. I think that one you actually
have to
pay a little bit of funds to. So,
all right. And the final event that is in the marquee events for the winter term is the Paint and Sip, the AAB Valentine's Day Paint and Sip, February 13th from 6 to 9:30. Share with us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we've been doing the Paint and Sip events for the last 2 terms at least. We did a Halloween edition last term, and then we just did a regular Paint and Sip the term before that. But it's basically, again, you just come out. We have mocktails because, when you hear the word paint and sip, a lot of people think alcoholic beverages. So instead to supplement that, because, we don't have alcohol on campus, it's a mocktail. So, it's a mock version of a cocktail. So everything but the alcohol per se.
All the juices, but none of the juice.
And then on top of that, then it's just like we have a painter that comes and basically she has a prompt that like the way that you can follow along with her, or you can do your own thing, either or. She gives that option usually. But this one, again, is going to be a Valentine's Day specific theme because, Valentine's Day is right there. So we try to do that just as another fun event for people to do on campus, something different. I mean, if people want to make it their date night idea, by all means, go ahead.
That's cool.
And we've had anywhere between 15 to 20 students come out and actually sit down and be able to do it. So it's been a successful event, and there'll be food there too as well.
That's amazing. It's so wonderful that you have been able to literally fill up this activities calendar for the winter term. I just got to give you all the credit in the world for really trying to go out on a limb and trying to do some really, really, really cool stuff.
Appreciate that.
So I do want to give a quick recap. I'm going to try to go in chronological order. Okay, on Wednesday, January 16th, you'll have Soul Food and Chill at 6 o'clock in the MPR. That leads into the BSU lock-in. It's going to be Friday, January 19th in the ATEC building, followed closely after that by the CPC film series showing Groundhog Day on Friday, February the 2nd, with myself presenting. And again, stay tuned to the second half of this podcast when Nick Hogan interviews me about the film series. That's going to be followed by the BSU Super Bowl party on Sunday, February 11th in ATEC 200 from 5 to 10 p.m. And then the Paint and Sip, the Valentine's Day edition from AAB. That's going to be February 13th from 6 to 9:30. And last but not least, the AAB trip to Washington, D.C. It's going to be on Saturday, February the 17th. For all of these things, please look at the app and email Elijah Tinson at centralpenn.edu if you have any further questions about any of these events. How's that sound?
That's good.
That's
good.
awesome.
Appreciate you.
All right. Well, like I said, I think the best thing that you can do if you want to get involved is to stay up to date on the app. Clubs are posting things there. You're posting things there. Different other organizations are posting things there. That's really the best way to stay up to date.
Yeah, and if you are interested in being a part of AAB, we do have meetings every Monday at 1 o'clock in the Cultural Diversity Center in Bollinger 43. And then if you are interested in BSU, we have meetings every Wednesday at 4 o'clock in ATEC 202. And that will all get posted on the app as well. So just so you guys know.
Fantastic. Well, Elijah, thank you so much for taking the time out to come. We look forward to having you back on the first podcast of every term to do the same kind of thing. Find out what we have going on here at Central Penn.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
You got it. And Noah, thank you. This is your first podcast with the Nightly News. Thank you so much for being here, and you did a fantastic job.
Oh, well, thank you. I had fun being here, too. It was nice to finally experience this. I can't wait to be in more and talk a little bit more. I want to give my input on a couple of crazy, kooky things going on the campus. But, this was fun being here and being on this podcast. I'm looking forward to the future. And thank you, Elijah, for all these awesome events and providing us students, like me personally as a student, I think it's pretty cool that we can go to D.C. with you.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much. It was so awesome to have both of you on today. And we look forward to having you back again sometime soon.
Appreciate you.
All right. For student success coach Elijah Tinson and Nightly News reporter Noah Lopez, this is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll see you again next time on the Nightly News Podcast.
This is Andrew Hunter, Nightly News sports reporter, and you're listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I am here with our CPC film correspondent, Nick Hogan. Nick, welcome back to the podcast.
Hello, it's good to be back.
Nick has been working with our CPC film series throughout really the duration of his time here at Central Penn and has done some wonderful things. In fact, 2 of his articles this year we just submitted for our PNA, the Pennsylvania News Media Association Awards. So that's basically our best stories that we do every single year. And I just want to say, Nick, you've done such a wonderful job, not only with the film series, but also you've written 2 really fantastic pieces about film and society, and also the summer blockbusters, which was one of those that we talked about. So let's talk about that story first, and then we're going to move into some let's just say the next part of the podcast.
Sure.
So over the summer, there was a lot of rhetoric about the flops, quote unquote, flops that came across in the summer movie pantheon, I suppose you will. The number one that we could look at is The Flash. The Flash, in terms of money outlaid versus money brought in, and even reception, was low. But then even films like Indiana Jones were labeled busts, even though it made over $275 million.
Yeah.
So just for listeners out there that may not have heard what your story was about, can you just give us a brief overview?
Yeah, it was basically about the fact that a lot of the successful movies this year, if you actually look at the budgets of them, they managed to keep their money low enough, but still had a ton of marketing and appeal. Instant ones I think of is Oppenheimer and Barbie, because that whole summer event was a huge deal, and they both made. Oppenheimer almost made $1 billion, like it was right under it, and Barbie definitely made way over $1 billion. And I think
and Oppenheimer, sorry to interrupt, Oppenheimer has been flying off the shelves physical copies.
I heard about that.
And
yeah,
Chris Nolan actually came out and is making a plea to people to purchase the physical copy of Oppenheimer, which I'm going to do with any Christmas money that I get, as we record this prior to the holiday. But I think that's interesting too. So you've got two really amazing movies, both unique, and I think
I wanted to
I don't
point
want
that
to steal
out
your
too.
thunder.
No,
here.
you're totally right. I think even though Barbie's an adaptation of a toy and Oppenheimer's a true story, they're still the first kind of movies of their kind. In the sense that Barbie uses the concept of the doll to make an actual original story instead of trying to sell you the doll. And Oppenheimer uses the true story to actually make a full narrative with creative liberties, as in like the way it's shot, the way it's filmed. And I think people latched onto that because it was showing that Hollywood still has some stuff left in it. Because I feel like superhero fatigue has definitely grown into the reason that a lot of the blockbusters flopped this year, because a few of them were superhero movies. And even if they weren't superhero movies, they were in that category. I'd say Indiana Jones is still kind of in that category.
Absolutely. He's a superhero in a way.
And I did notice a lot of them were Disney movies, and I don't think it's because Disney's necessarily losing an edge. I think it's because they keep overinflating their budgets to the point that no matter how much money they're going to make back, it's not going to look big enough.
There's only been a small handful of billion-dollar movies ever. Of course, I'm sure Oppenheimer's close. I haven't looked at the.
It was
the
like
budget.
$891 million last I checked, and that was a couple months ago.
I would also say that they did a brief re-release in IMAX. Not that that's going to move the needle that much, but either way, it's close, and Barbie certainly exceeded. The problem is that for these movie companies who are spending $350 million budgets, for it to be successful, you're looking at needing $500+ million. And frankly, only massive films are really going to do that. And so I thought what was really interesting is the point that you're making is, listen, let's trim those budgets a little bit. You can make the same movie for $200 million.
There is no need for the amount of marketing machine and money that they put into it. I honestly do think YouTube ads, some billboards, and some TV ads are more than enough to sell your movie. They really are.
And there's also a lot of things that you can do that probably don't cost a whole lot, like trying to get on the late night TV circuit, that type of thing, maybe sort of more guerrilla marketing as opposed to spending tens of millions of dollars on TV spots.
And it's not even just that. A lot of the times I wonder where that money goes, because I've seen movies with very tiny budgets, like anything from Blumhouse is a very minuscule budget, and they make tens of millions of dollars on movies that are less than $500,000 budget, and they have almost the same amount of exposure that I've seen on the internet, if not more, from their ads and stuff. So it makes me wonder what they're doing right, and Disney or other big companies, not just Disney, like the DCEU, is doing that's making their movies flop so much. And I think Flash basically killed the DCCU because they're finishing out their last couple of movies and they're done with it. And a lot of people like to say that it's because of politics, and I really don't think that's true, because I'm a guy and I saw Barbie and I loved it.
I did too.
And I didn't even... I mean, there's a lot of political subject matter in that movie that isn't necessarily in your face, but it is very open, especially near the end. And I still just thought it was a fun movie, and I thought it handled it very delicately without it making me feel, popular word, woke quotes. But
I really
liked that movie, and I thought it was very sweet, and it actually had a good message, not just for girls, but for everyone. And that movie has some political undertones, but that made $1 billion. I don't think it's a political thing at all.
I got to the point where it was such a big film, and as somebody who studies film and currently doing my dissertation on film, and obviously I'm a part of the film series here, I thought I probably should go see this movie, and I enjoyed it very much. I didn't know walking in. I mean, never owned a Barbie, or I have
never
played.
did
I have
either.
played Barbie with my daughter, so there's nothing wrong with that. But I've never really had the opportunity to really immerse myself in the Barbie culture. But I loved it. I thought
Yeah.
it was interesting. And
It was one of those few movies I saw when I'm like, this is special. Like, this is a special movie, and Hollywood used to be full of those, and like that. You know, there's a lot of blockbusters I did enjoy, like the Mario movie and stuff, but that's not special. That's just, you know, a movie on a game I like. But Barbie felt like it was actually made with love for making movies,
Sure.
not just the doll.
Absolutely, and I would also say that I think that you've really done an interesting job talking about these movies were different.
They
and,
were
and a
different.
lot of the superhero movies are just all retreads, and it's
Yes.
even to an extent. I think some of the last 3 Star Wars maybe didn't do so well because that's also almost like a superhero movie in a way. I mean,
Yeah.
the Jedi essentially are superheroes.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
You know, they have unreal powers. But anyway, so I wanted to just thank you for being so conscientious this year and doing such fantastic work as part of our film series.
I love talking about movies anyway, and it gives me an excuse to watch more stuff, so I'm never going to pass that up.
Speaking of the film series, why we are here today is this is sort of a very special episode of the Nightly News Podcast in that I will be presenting our next film series in the winter term, and it will be on Friday, February 2nd at 6 o'clock in the Capitol Blue Cross Theater. I will be presenting the classic Bill Murray comedy Groundhog Day, and as an added bonus, that's actually my birthday, and I am going to be spending my birthday with my favorite people. Of course, my family will be there, but of course, the Nightly News Media Club and all of my students, as well as any faculty and staff members, and it's open to the public for free. So come down, spend your Groundhog Day with us. But from here on out, Nick, I have no direction for this particular podcast because you're going to be interviewing me. So I'm going to turn the tables on the Nightly News Podcast format, and I'm going to allow you to interview me for a change about this
Ooh,
upcoming
fancy.
film series.
Sure thing.
So shoot.
All right, I already have a few questions that came to the top of my head that I saved for this because I didn't want to, you know, get a disingenuine answer until I asked you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's Bill Murray, obviously. Do you like Bill Murray movies anyway? Is that why you like Groundhog Day, or is there another reason? Because obviously it's about your birthday technically, so is that some of the reason you enjoy it?
I love Bill Murray. I grew up with Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Scrooged.
That's my favorite Bill Murray movie. It's so
Even,
good.
even until today, I love what he does. Even though I watched the most recent Ghostbusters, which I really appreciated and liked, and they're coming out with a sequel to that,
saw, yeah.
which is going to, I believe, come out next year around. It's coming out relatively soon. Off the top of my head, I don't recall
I think
exactly.
it was March. My dad knows he loves Ghostbusters, so
I hope it is. But I love Bill Murray. He's funny. I've liked almost every film he's ever been in. He's been in some sort of odd movies that I never got into. Life Aquatic, for instance, I didn't really care for. There was definitely some Bill Murray movies I don't necessarily like. But certainly growing up, Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters 2, Groundhog Day, Scrooged, What About Bob? I mean, these are
forgot
films.
about What About Bob.
These
That's a
are
great
films
one.
that I still are on heavy rotation for me.
Yeah.
Why I like this movie, though, is it is because of my birthday. I always thought it was interesting that I was born on Groundhog Day, and I've ultimately ended up finding out quite a bit about Groundhog Day over the years. I've never gotten to go to Punxsutawney on Groundhog Day. However, I have met Punxsutawney Phil, and I have been to
Aw.
Gobbler's Knob. I used to work with a company that we were a vendor at Punxsutawney on several occasions, and it was so much fun to meet all of the people in the hats. And like if you tune in during Groundhog Day on
Yep.
PCN, they have the hats and everything. So we met all of those people, and of course met Punxsutawney Phil as well. Wonderful, wonderful people. So I've always had this affinity with it. I remember seeing it at the theater when I was just 12 years old. This movie just in 23 celebrated its 30-year anniversary.
crazy.
So
Yeah.
I think that's super interesting as well. But I love Bill Murray. Groundhog Day has just always been super interesting to me because I was born on it. But the movie itself is just amazing, which I know we'll talk about.
Yeah, I've never been to Punxsutawney either, but I always thought it was really cool how there's like a classic movie that takes place in Pennsylvania, and like that's part of the setting of the movie. Like that's very important to the movie's story because it's Groundhog Day, which is very Pennsylvanian.
Though, a very important note, that is not Punxsutawney that you see in the movie.
I figured it wouldn't be.
It is actually a place in Illinois.
Really?
Yes. Both Murray and Harold Ramis, who is also one of the Ghostbusters who directed this film, they... Let's just say if you've ever been to Punxsutawney, there's not much there.
I would assume.
It's out in the middle of nowhere, very, very, very small town. Now, they do have like a small downtown area, so I don't want to dismiss that. But even Gobbler's Knob is literally out in the middle of nowhere. You would be driving out there like, where in the world am I going? And that's the intention. It's like a nice, I don't want to say a park, but it's a nice wooded area that you could just go and hang out, and there's like a walking trail, and it's all really cool, and they do a lot of events there. It's not what you see in the movie, not Punxsutawney.
Yeah, I think it's the same effect that like The Office has, where it takes place in Scranton, even though it's definitely not filmed there. That concept, though, I just love when stuff is so popular and part of its setting and identity is because it's filmed in the state that I live. I always thought that was so cool, because most stuff takes place in New York, California, so having something as random as Pennsylvania is so neat. I do have another question about the movie. Obviously, the movie revolves around like a time loop gimmick. No, I don't want to say gimmick. It's a great idea. It revolves around a time loop. It's not the first movie of its kind to do that, but a lot of movies that have had time loops since have said because of Groundhog Day. Do you think it's because of a specific way that the movie uses that concept or anything like that? You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Part of what I'm going to talk about in the presentation is the depth of this movie. Now, I think when a lot of people think about it, maybe even societally about this film, as we think about it as being a comedy, and it is funny. Like, it is Bill Murray, comic legend. There are definitely laugh out loud moments in this film. But the more
When he punches the one guy?
Yeah,
At
Ned
the
Ryerson.
eighth loop?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely a lot of funny things about the film. Lots of things I find funny, maybe that everybody wouldn't necessarily find funny. But what's interesting about this film is I think it speaks to two things, and it really is just sort of a matter of perspective. The first thing is the monotony of our lives.
Yeah, that's definitely important.
And what I mean by that is the feeling that you get every day you wake up and have to go to work or go to school or go to your job, whatever that job may be. It's almost like a Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
You get up, you do the same thing in the morning, you get in your car, you drive to wherever you're going, you do what you do, you leave, you go home, you cook dinner, you watch TV or do whatever in the evenings. Our lives inherently are repetitious.
Yeah.
And if you don't find fun ways to intersperse that repetition, our lives can maybe become a little dull. Why I think this movie is interesting is because it illustrates that if you live your life in a way that you're always learning and always embracing adventure, that life can be so much more rewarding.
That's true. Yeah, I agree with that. I think some of the message, obviously the main message is he becomes a better person in the end, because it's
Redemption. It's a redemption
very
story.
similar to Scrooged in that aspect. Ironically, Bill Murray is the star of that. Obviously, one has a time loop, one has ghosts, so they're very different films and both enjoyable in their own right. But what I like about Groundhog Day is I think another message it has is, like you said, it reflects on the monotony of everyday life. And I think that's part of his character, is how every day is the same to him. But when he realizes he's actually in a time loop and yearns to be back to normal, he realizes how different every day really is.
And can be
And
if
can
we
be
make it
if
so.
you make the right choices. And it becomes a point where he's reliving the same day, but they're different every time he does it.
Absolutely. Or he does certain things every day. Like I remember a scene where he talks about he has to leave because he has to go catch the boy falling out of the tree at a certain time. So he's doing all of these things repetitiously, but he's also doing new things and learning new skills and trying to be a genuine person, because frankly at the beginning of the movie he is basically a
jerk.
a stuck-up weather forecaster that thinks he's more of a star than he is and treats other people poorly, tries to take advantage of people. I mean, there are also different stages, and I've read some of these I'll refer to in my presentation, that basically it's sort of a three-part sort of minutia. It's like at the beginning he's a jerk, and then once he realizes that he essentially can't die, he tries to start taking advantage of people. He, ends up hooking up with the one girl in the diner. He ends up stealing bags of money from the armored car.
Yep.
He drives down the railroad tracks with a groundhog and drives off of a cliff. But it's that sort of hedonism that illustrates like you can't live your life this way. Even if you do have all these multiple chances, it's not fulfilling, and you're still a bad person. And then it's really once he starts trying to see Andy McDowell's character that he really understands. Like at first, I think he's trying to take advantage of her, and she just keeps shutting him down and shutting him down.
I agree.
She keeps getting slapped, but later when he becomes a sincere person and he tries to help others, it shines through, and that's when, ultimately, spoiler alert, the time loop ends. Because it does end, and it ends when he gets to the point that he is a better person. So the moral, I love this word parable, is really interesting and unique that, while our lives can be monotonous, if we're sincerely a good person, our lives are going to be rewarding and fulfilling, which is, I think, truly what the movie aims to share.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it also shows his character how, like, not everyone is there to make his life monotonous. Everyone has their own life and their own problems. And he definitely delves into that, like when he learns the old man's story. And
that was very sad.
It is very sad.
For a comedy, quote unquote, that's a really tough couple scenes. And there are some other very sad scenes as well.
Yeah, and he realizes that everyone else, they all have their own monotony in their lives, and they still deal with it and are nice, good people. And even if they're not, they have stuff going on that you don't really question. And I still think people in real life don't do this, including myself. You don't really question that other people have an entire life outside of your existence. And I think that's some of the reason that he becomes a better person, too, because he realizes that they could be in a worse situation than him and still be more grateful than he is.
So in the poster, let's just say, in the little write-up that we did, one of the things that I do want to talk about, and I certainly don't want to get down a religious track or anything like that, but the bottom line is a lot of people who have analyzed this film view him as being in a sense of purgatory.
Oh, absolutely.
That he is sort of between the real world and being stuck in this time loop. Like he's in the real world, but he's only in the real world for that day over and over. So in a sense, he's in this idea of purgatory, and he's gonna be there until he can figure out how to get out of there. You also hear a lot of people analyze how long he was in this time loop. And there's some different sort of calculations I'll go over. Yeah. There's this amazing video on YouTube that if you just like type in how many days was Bill Murray in Groundhog Day.
I think I've probably seen that. That shows up.
Pretty sure you watched it during class.
Yeah.
It does such a better job than even I could do trying to explain this. But essentially, one school of thought is that he's in this time loop for 10,000 years. I mean, that's sort of the high end, and maybe even hundreds of years on a maybe more conservative perspective. And of course, even Harold Ramis has come out and kind of given some hints, but it's not about
how long he's there. It's about what he does in that time.
Yeah, and I think that certainly in the second half of the film, they kind of go scene to scene to scene to show what he's been up to and what he's learned and the type of person that he's become. And so I think that really just speaks more to the film itself. And I think it's also really cool because, of course, it's dated in that it's sort of before the digital revolution, but it still holds up. I mean,
I agree.
I mean, you watch it, you're like, yeah, okay, this is not from the last 5 years, but you can still watch it and enjoy the message even without all of the digital aspects of our life.
I think a lot of how it holds up, a lot of that movie takes place in that one diner. I forgot what it's called. But that just, I know it's technically not from Pennsylvania, but it just reeks of central Pennsylvania feeling
It
to
does.
it because everyone's gone to a diner, but like it just feels like it's local. I think they did a great job with that.
I think they did a good job too. I always think it's interesting though to tell people that, I've been to Punxsutawney, and that's not
that.
Punxsutawney. but I do like the whole small town vibe, which I know that
a lot of Pennsylvania is like that.
Right. I know Harold Ramis specifically went out of his way to find a specific city that he thought embodied the spirit of Pennsylvania, which he's apparently had some interaction with in the past. I think that's really interesting. So those are the two biggest things I'm going to look at. Like, how our lives can feel monotonous and repetitive, and that's sort of a parable to that. But also this idea of living your life to the fullest, in as far as not being greedy, trying to help others, and trying to make other people better, which are really the two central messages that I hope to share with the audience.
That's really good. Is there any like specific spoilers, I guess, for anyone that's listening?
I would certainly
any
hope everyone's
specific-
seen this film by now.
I would hope so because I first saw it when I was like 6. So
I'm sure there are going to be some people without, but the film series is okay to spoil a little bit because it's like, hey, training you what to look for.
maybe you'll get curious to see the movie if you haven't seen it.
Indeed.
What's your favorite part of the movie? Because obviously a lot of the parts of the movie repeat on purpose, but I would hardly call the movie itself repetitive because that's part of the story of the film. Is there like a certain part of the film that you like a lot?
I think this might sound strange, but early in the film, when they keep showing him at Groundhog Day, and he continues day by day, like caring less, and even by the last day, he's like, "Okay, I'm not even doing this. Meet me in the diner when you're done." Like that was always funny. Of course, Ned Ryerson is a funny person in the film. Anything with the groundhog, I mean, there's so many really good scenes that it's tough to kind of pinpoint one. But honestly, the last scene where he is really fully changed, and he's with Andy McDowell's character at the like banquet at the end, and everyone's coming up to him, "Oh, thank you for doing this and thank you for doing that," and she's just like, "Who is this person?" Because for her, she knows him as being this.
Yeah, she
uptight,
wasn't there with him those.
Right. She doesn't understand the growth he's come to. She only remembers everything else before this day, and then she sees this day, and it's like, oh my God, this is a different person, which I think is really cool. But a lot of funny moments, but a lot of moments that make you think.
I think another really cool thing about that movie is that it's on Groundhog Day. Obviously, that's the name of the movie. Not a lot of movies, when you think of a holiday, you think of a specific film. It's one of those rare movies, though, where you only think of that movie. Or one of those rare holidays where you only think of that movie. It's not like Christmas or Halloween where there's tons of movies you can associate with the holiday. With Groundhog Day, that is the Groundhog Day movie. And I think that's so cool.
But it has nothing to do with Groundhog
It really
Day. I mean,
doesn't.
other than the fact that, yes, he is in quote-unquote Punxsutawney.
It really doesn't, though.
It's just such an odd day of the year for him to be stuck in this time loop in this small town, which he hates, at least coming into it. And then he understands the charm, and of course, at the end, he says, "Yeah, I think we should move here," because he's a legend in town. I do think that that's really interesting. I'm actually doing my dissertation on Christmas movies, so I'm really in the weeds on holiday-themed movies. This movie, in a way, has almost superseded the holiday.
Yeah.
Like when you think about Groundhog Day, and maybe you'd ask just random people what it is, other than yes, no, did the groundhog see its shadow? Okay, yes, we get that. When you think about Groundhog Day, I think a lot of people probably gravitate to this movie.
I instantly think of the movie more so than the actual day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unlike other Christmas movies. And I think there's a case to be made where you said that obviously the movie's barely about Groundhog Day. I think it's kind of, I may say something controversial here, how Die Hard is technically a Christmas movie, but it's really not about Christmas whatsoever. But people
That's
still
a whole separate conversation.
I'm not
We
going to
don't
go
have
into that,
time
but
to
I'm
go
just
down
saying
that
how
road.
it's the same concept, how it's very much not really Christmassy whatsoever, but people associate it with that holiday. Same with how Groundhog Day, I mean, it's called Groundhog Day, but there's really nothing about it. I say the only part of that movie that's like Groundhog Day is like the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the rest is more so just his life being monotonous.
Right. So I think that that's really interesting. But Nick, I really appreciate you taking the interest in this film. But not only that, just taking an interest in what we're doing with the club. One of the things that I always try to talk with students about, and I actually just had this conversation with someone, the media club is only limited by your imagination. And when you came in and you had this passion for film, I immediately knew like film series because, the two people we had prior to you, I've said this many times, you had big shoes to fill. Leslie Heimbaugh, Hall of Famer. Dylan will be a Hall of Famer at some point. You're next in line, and you've done such a great job with it. And I'm glad that even though I know you're busy and you work, like the thing that you can do, the thing that you've sort of planted your flag on is this CPC film series and covering film for us. And I think that you're just doing
That's my
amazing
favorite thing
work.
to do at school. It really is.
But that's what I mean. Like, I think a lot of people, when they think about getting involved in clubs and organizations, they just think it's going to be such a a drag, or maybe even just a big time commitment. And I'm here to tell you, like, I'd say most clubs would agree. we want you to do things you're interested in.
Yeah, don't do the club if you hate movies. Like,
So, like, we were able to very quickly find things that you were interested in and have that sort of just be your angle with the club. And I just think that that's so wonderful. And you've done just such great work. Like I said at the beginning, we submitted 2 of your stories in for PNA, which is, even just from our perspective, is a high honor because we are very, very picky because we do have to pay for the entries.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
But I just want to thank you so much for your commitment and dedication to the film series. And I'm, of all of them, and I would say this might be my last time presenting. This is actually going to be my 3rd time in the last 6 years doing it. But it was on Groundhog Day. It's my birthday.
Perfect.
I said we have to do this, and we're going to. So, Nick, I appreciate everything, and I'm really looking forward to having you be a part of this.
Of course, I'm excited to see the movie. I haven't seen it since a couple terms ago, and by the point that the movie is displayed, it'll be like half a year by the time I last seen it.
And
so.
we just missed the 30th anniversary, but we'll just say it's the 30th anniversary. Really, it'll be the
Tomato,
31st. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and I just hope that everybody. I know it's February. I will just say one thing. It is Friday, February 2nd. If for some reason there is bad weather, we do have a snow date reserved for February the 9th. So just keep an eye out on the Nightly News.
I really hope there's no snow day because that'll kind of ruin the movie.
Me too, and my birthday for that matter.
That too.
But no, I really hope that this is something that people can come out for and want to hang around. It's a relatively short movie, so I would imagine that we would be done around 8:30. So,
Yeah.
But Nick, again, thank you so much for your
Of
dedication.
course, I love doing this. It's great to be on.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening to this special edition of the Nightly News Podcast. And again, I wanted to thank CPC film correspondent Nick Hogan for joining me here today to talk about Friday, February 2nd's Groundhog Day. That's going to be starting at doors open at 6 o'clock on that evening, and we'll have refreshments. And it's all going to go to support the Nightly News Media Club. So come out and hang out with me on my birthday.
All right, I'll be there.
All right. Thank you so much, Nick. That's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. We'll see you again next time.